Hi there, I'm Ishan Mani, president of the iWRITE Youth Club, and today I'm super excited to chat with Miss Malia Maunakea in the latest installment of the iWRITE exclusive author series. Miss Maunakea is a Kanaka Maoli native Hawaiian writer who grew up on Hawaii Island and Oahu before relocating to the continent for college. She writes both middle grade fiction and nonfiction and is the author of Leia and the Fire Goddess, published in summer 2023, and Lightweight Backpacking for Families, published in spring 2023. When not at her computer, she can often be found roaming the Rocky Mountains with her husband, their two children, and a rescue mutt named Peggy. Thank you so much, Miss Maunakea, for speaking to me today.
Happy to be joining.
So let's start with actually this question. From a young age, you've loved Hawaiian legends. What about them captured your attention?
I really love legends of any sort. I love the idea of knowing where we come from or why things exist the way they exist. And to me, it seemed like legends usually tell those tales and try to explain how things came to be. So I really enjoyed Hawaiian legends because they explained the place that I was living and they explained my people and really gave me a sense of history that wasn't just facts and cut and dry and memorization.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that's also why a lot of, even like kids, we grow up loving like Rick Riordan, all the Percy Jackson books, all of those, because there's a sense of magic about it too. And it also, I think, gives us a bit of an explanation to the world. That's amazing. And this is a big one, but this is kind of the theme of our author series, is representation in literature. So what does representation in literature mean to you?
I know it's been said a million times, but books are mirrors or windows. And growing up, most of the books that I was reading were windows into other people's lives. I never saw myself reflected in any story. I wanted to make sure that kids were able to see themselves reflected from one other mirror. You know, I think nowadays there are a lot more mirrors out there than there used to be when I was growing up, but this just adds to those reflections and allows another set of kids maybe that didn't see themselves before see themselves in that book. So that's what I picture.
Amazing. Yeah, and I think your book might be the only piece of Hawaiian mythology or like a kind of mythological fiction that I've seen on any bookshelf. So that's really special.
In
And
the middle
speaking of,
grade space, it's
yeah,
definitely tougher to come by in libraries and whatnot. So I'm
yeah,
hoping.
yeah, let's hope there's more that show up. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And speaking of your book, when and how did you realize that Leia and the Fire Goddess was a story that needed to be told? How did you come up with the idea? Take us through that.
Oh, you mentioned Rick Riordan. My son was 10 years old and absolutely obsessed with all of those stories and Greek mythology and all the fabulous adventures. And I essentially manifested Tutu in my book because I was telling my son, you have to know our culture. You have to know who we are as well. We have really cool stories. We have really cool gods and goddesses. And he wouldn't listen to me because no 10-year-old really wants to listen to their mom when they're reading other books. So I thought maybe if I could write this story about my life, about my culture, and get it on a book next to the Rick Riordan books, get it on a shelf next to the Rick Riordan books, that maybe someday my son would pick it up, and that would be amazing. He hasn't yet, but other kids have. So that's wonderful.
I love that. Yeah, and you mentioned it's a book kind of about your life too. And I saw that in Anna, the main character. I feel like she's kind of partially inspired by you too. I mean, like she's from Colorado of Hawaiian heritage, a big fan of Hawaiian legends. So how is she like you and how is she different from you?
This was my first middle grade length fiction story, and I wasn't sure how to go about creating a character, quite frankly. I knew the plot. I knew I had this great vision for the adventure, but all my feedback was that my character was really flat, that she needed more of a purpose, that she needed more of a why. And as I dug into that, I realized a lot of the reason she was going on this journey was self-discovery and acceptance of who she is and feeling like she's enough. And that was all of the stuff that I struggled with growing up in Hawaii, looking the way I do compared to my sister, compared to my dad, compared to other people at my school who are much, much darker, much, much more Hawaiian in appearance. So tapping into that truth and those yucky feelings of insecurity and um, fears, I think really helped Anna get fleshed out and more three-dimensional, which is terrifying, but also helpful because I think that comes across on the page that she is a real person. Hi, it's me. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, and that process of self-discovery, the growth, all of that, I'm sure that also must have been reflected in your whole process of writing. I mean, your first middle grade fiction novel. So, how was that whole process looking back and, in retrospect? Tell us more about the growth that you had through that whole process.
It was wild. So I realize that everybody's journey is different, and my journey happens to be a lot faster than some other authors. And I just grabbed the opportunity and ran with it, did a heck of a lot of research. So when I started out, I researched what middle grade fiction looks like and where I wanted my story to be on the shelves. Like, it's not a joke that I went into this very, very keenly looking at the Rick Riordan books and dissecting what the patterns are for their storytelling. I voice to texted a number of the stories, the first 6 chapters, and analyzed. I have a degree in civil engineering,
Oh,
so
wow.
I'm very logical and analytical and really like to find patterns and that formulas. So I analyzed how much of those first 6 chapters were backstory, were narration, were the main character talking versus the other characters, how many characters were introduced, how many names were there, all that stuff, and tried to use that to refine my first 6 because the story took me 3 months to draft the first
Wow.
time. It was from April to August of 2020, and the first draft was about 49,000 words. It worked for middle grade, for the length of story, the length of words, according to all the websites that I researched in how long is a middle grade story. And then I worked with feedback from mentor groups, but I also applied to a couple mentorships and got in for We Need Diverse Books and SCBWI in my local regional chapter.
Hmm.
And those mentors, I got into both those mentorships, and they helped me revise for months. That grew the manuscript from 49,000 words up to about 60,000. And then I went out on queried, got an agent, revised more, went out on sub, got an editor, revised more, and the final product is about 80,000. So it
Hmm.
almost doubled in length
Oh,
during this
wow.
journey. But it was a very fast journey. I tell the kids that I've spoken to that it took me about 2 years of revisions to get it that, double in length. But 2 years is the blink of an eye when you're writing a debut novel. So it's been a very fast ride.
Wow. It's kind of interesting. All of the writers that we've spoken with this year have some kind of background in engineering. I think a lot of them, at least. I can think of at least 3 names, have some
I
kind of
love
background
that.
in engineering, and they've all kind of taken a very different path, but then they've all come into to being an author and a fiction author. So I wonder, is there something, I don't know, what are they teaching in this, in these engineering degrees that is equipping people to go into writing these incredible, children's, fiction books.
That is fantastic. I don't know, but I'm so glad we're all using different parts of our brain as we grow.
Really interesting. Now, you wrote and released your first two books this year, and the other one is a nonfiction book, Backpacking with Kids. Did you write them simultaneously?
Kind of, because I at least edited them simultaneously, because Backpacking with Kids came about. That was the first story I kind of thought of. Well, I thought fiction, and then I thought, I have no idea how to write fiction. That's way too hard. And a friend of mine came out with a backpacking book, just like Backpacking for Dummies. And I was like, all right, that I know I could do. I could just spin it so that it's with kids, because we've gone on 700 miles worth of backpacking trips with our children. So that seemed, from an engineering perspective, logical and easy and just like a book report. So I researched how to write a nonfiction, how to go about querying. Well, that was actually subbing, because I didn't even look for an agent for nonfiction. I just sent it out to publishers. And for nonfiction, you don't have to write the whole story. You kind of write the first few chapters and a table of contents and see if they like your idea. So I sent that out in January, I want to say, of 2020. And while I was waiting to hear back, I started writing chapter books, because I thought, okay, if I can write that much in nonfiction, maybe I can try fiction, but just really short, like 8 to 12,000 words, like Magic Treehouse style.
Yeah.
Because those are really formulaic, and I had some good ideas. It's like, I can follow a pattern for this. So I wrote a few of them, and I went out to query those, but tons of rejections, like 70 plus rejections. And did more research and saw that chapter books are really hard to sell in the market, and that middle grade was a little easier because a lot of chapter books are purchased in-house. So I thought, okay, well, if I can write a few 8 to 12,000 word books, maybe I can write a 40,000 word book. So then that's how I started trying to write that. In the meantime, it was while I was waiting to hear back from the nonfiction. I have ADHD, so I have to constantly be trying something. Yeah. So
that's good.
So then I got yeses on both of them and was working on both of them at the same time.
It keeps you busy. That's nice.
Yes, very much.
That's really cool. So I saw this this tweet from September, and it was, I leave tomorrow for a 25 school and 8 bookstore tour across Hawaii to talk about lay and tell the kids their voices matter. Pelly decided to erupt again. I realized I'm too insignificant for her to actually be welcoming me home, but it feels special. So on the note of volcanoes, I mean, in the wake of the Maui fires, how does it feel you're releasing a book that's telling a Hawaiian story, or a story at least of a Hawaiian character?
Yeah, so 2 different parts there, right? Because the Maui fires were horrific and completely devastating, and I'm so glad that I was able to go visit Maui, but at the same time I did cancel 2 of the school visits, because I mean, the cover of my book is a volcano erupting, and it's all about the fire goddess, and I mean, there is lava going toward Tutu's house at one point. So I was really sensitive and aware that it might not be the best fit for kids over there dealing with the trauma that they've had to go through. So I talked to each of the schools on Maui. There were 3 schools on Maui and 1 bookstore on Maui that I was planning on visiting for this whole school visit. And 2 of them said, no, thank you. We have some kids that would just be too much for right now. So great, we canceled those. But the bookstore and Kahului Elementary both said, please, yes, please do still come. These kids need some joy. They need some normalcy. Like, this would be a very big distraction, which would be great right now. Let's have a positive distraction. So getting to go and getting to bring these stories of these Hawaiian gods and goddesses into the classrooms of the kids who I am trying to represent in this story was a complete dream come true. And it was really fun because in putting the presentation together and showing them where I come from and that we're the same, essentially. We like a lot of the same things. I went to the same kind of Title I public school. I climbed the guava trees. I fed the cows. I did all the like country things and like the same food and all that. So if I can do it, they can do it. And here are all of the stories we grew up with in a book. And they recognized a lot of them, and they all recognized the reason why you shouldn't pick the lehua. So they understood why my main character had to come from Colorado, because if she came from Hawaii, she wouldn't have picked the flower, and then there would have been no story. So it was really a dream to go and talk to them all.
Wow, that's superb. No, that's amazing. And I think I didn't even make the connection between fire goddess and volcano, but that in itself is, I mean, wow.
Yeah.
How timely in so many different ways. But
Yes.
I'm so glad that you got to go back to Hawaii. That must have been a super experience. And I know on the note of what you really want kids to take away from the book, I know that there was a sense of empowerment for those kids, but for young readers in general, what's a takeaway? How do you want them to leave? How do you want them to feel as they leave the book? Anything about Leia and the Fire Goddess?
I know that going into this type of book, the readers that are reading this type of story might start to have questions about themselves and if they're capable of doing the things that they want to do, or where exactly do they fit in their classrooms, in their families, in the world. And what I'd love for them to take away from reading this book is that they are enough and they're able to fit in wherever they want to fit in. They don't need to seek approval externally, that just being themselves is plenty.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Miss Maunakea. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And folks who are watching, check out Leia and the Fire Goddess at all major literary vendors. And Miss Maunakea is online at maliamaunakea.com and at Malia Maunakea on Twitter and Instagram. I'm Ishan Mani, president of the iWRITE Youth Club, signing off. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.